This winter break, our group had the privilege to travel to Chile to study the geological and astronomical wonders of the Atacama Desert. And we were especially fascinated by the movement of people and cultures caused by both land and skyscapes. The archaeological and anthropological history of this region can be broken up into 8 periods. The first period, known as the Archaic period, was inhabited mainly by hunting and gathering tribes along the coast and main waterways. This time period coincides conveniently with the melting of the last glacial maximum in the area, which many believe led to increased inhabitability, with a higher likelihood of water sources than we see in the area today. Archaeologists have uncovered basic lithic technology in the region's oldest mines from this period, our first evidence of how the region's geological landscape has influenced its inhabitants, and vice versa. Lifestyles became more complex in the formative period, beginning approximately 3,500 years ago. Communities formed distinct villages, notably on the coast, because we moved to the water. And we find our first evidence of ceremonies and burials, as well as the domestication of animals. You can thank the peoples of this time period for your llama wool sweater. This is when Aldea de Tulor, the prehistoric archaeological site pictured here, was settled. From about 400 to 1000 AD was the period known as the Middle or Golden Era. This is when interaction and trade began to take place between tribes, especially between those located in what is now San Pedro and western Bolivia. Most prominently, the Tiwanaku, a powerful people group in Bolivia, traded black polished pottery and snuffing tablets, as well as imposed their religion and hierarchy onto the whole Atacama society, although they did not settle this zone as an official colony like they did to some of their other neighbors. In the late intermediate period, the Tiwanaku people, as well as the groups in the Atacama, suffered political or environmental issues which caused them to break into smaller settlements. Technology, however, continued to improve, and mining sites became more prominent. The development of new and differing ethnic identities caused bonds to dissolve between the Atacama peoples and the remaining Tiwanaku, while, at the same time, the Pucara de Quitor was inhabited with a diverse unity composed of communities who lived in the catchment area of the Salar de Atacama and the Loa River. As these latter communities began to proliferate gradually along the ravine, they put processes and structures in place that enabled them to settle in areas that were previously considered uninhabitable. Many of these sites are surrounded by striking geological landscapes, primarily thanks to mineral deposits and tectonic plate movement. Surrounded by ripples, caves, and valleys left by dissolving salt deposits and angled rock layers left by the colliding Nazca Plate, several of these settlements acted as mighty fortresses with strong natural barriers to enemies, which is part of the reason why several social conflicts escalated into violence during this time. Near the end of this period, notable conflict arose between these groups settled in Quitor and those in Vilama, an area near the border of modern-day Bolivia and Argentina, over control of the main hydric resources, which, because we are in the middle of the desert, were, of course, sparse. The populations of the Salar and Loa catchment, however, maintained strong bonds with communities living in the high plateau of Lipez and in the northwest of Argentina. That is, until... During the late period, the Inca Empire from Peru began the expansion process of their political domain and began to conquest the Atacama territories. They installed tambos, where Incan officials stayed. Remnants of the Inca trails still have many rock towers along them, meant to symbolize safe travels and victory. To legitimize their power, the Inca state began to incorporate their own spiritual beliefs into those zones of Quitor, Catarpe, Vilama, Sapar, and Caspana y Turi. This combining of religions led to a strong belief in the stars, and even lack thereof. Because the Atacama Desert is one of the driest places on Earth with minimal cloud cover, coupled with the fact that it has a high average elevation, astronomical events are supremely clear, nearly just as much today as when the Atacameños were spinning their own stories. While the Inca did arrange stars into what we know today as traditional constellations, individual stars grouped together in a connect-the-dot-like fashion, these were considered inanimate and relatively unimportant. Rather, their more important observations happened in the dark spaces between the stars. In the southern hemisphere, the Milky Way is far more prominent, making these dark constellations much more apparent. Fun fact, the only other culture we currently know of that did this are the Aboriginal Australians, and it doesn't get more southern hemisphere than that. One of their most important dark constellations was the Llama, called Orch Chile, which rises in November and signifies the yearly rhythms of the llama herders, who were particularly attentive to its movements and offered the celestial ungulate sacrifices. Llamas were of great importance to the Inca. They were food, beasts of burden, and sacrifices to the gods. Although the Llama is a dark constellation, the stars Alpha and Beta Centauri serve as its eyes and are the first to emerge as it rises. In 1530, the Spanish invaded the area and killed many indigenous people, ushering in the colonial period. As part of an imposition of a new order, Catholic churches and missions were built, as well as indigenous reservations, the latter primarily to make it easier to get taxes from the people. It is there that the Spaniards taught the Atacameños the Catholic religion and Spanish language. However, to make the faith easier to teach, they incorporated many heathen practices into Catholicism. For example, the concept of saints was designed to more easily transition from a polytheistic belief system to Christianity. Similar to how once they had a god for everything, now they have a patron saint for everything, who just all happen to work under one god. In the Republican period, the people of both Chile and Bolivia gained their independence from Spain. The Antofagasta region, specifically, was Bolivian until 1879 when the War of the Pacific broke out, at which point the land was ceded to Chile. The valuable natural resources of the region led to a lot of mining, which led to a lot of wars over saltpeter, also known as nitrates, as well as copper, silver, and salt. Today, Chile is in the contemporary period, which begins in 1977 with the naturalization of copper. See, geology is even now affecting our dating systems. The country still continues copper extraction, but also is encouraging more the use of clean energy through windmills and solar panels. Tourism, that's us, is now very popular in the region as well. The people of the Atacama are, still today, ethnically diverse, but tied together geographically and culturally. The religion and traditions still maintain the same mix of belief systems, incorporating Catholic practices from the colonial period, as well as traditional pagan practices. For example, in the village of Socare, each year, the people of the village take a cross from the Boy Valley and the Girl Valley into the church. They blindfold all the saints, Mary and Jesus, and everyone leaves as the crosses fornicate overnight. In the morning, a priest says a ceremony, followed by a shaman who conducts an animal sacrifice. They then place the crosses back in the valley to ensure a year of good crops and soil. Overall, this was an amazing experience we were all so glad to be a part of. The Atacama was a great place to understand how geology, astronomy, and anthropology work together. Thank you for watching and for an overall great semester. Adios.